All right, what's up, guys? I'm here with Beau Beech, professional basketball player, last seen in Serbia, at least on this podcast, and we'll get an update from him in a minute. But you might recognize him from an episode a couple of years ago, and he came back to hang with us and talk about some basketball. Thanks for joining us, Beau.
Thank you for having me, Roman. Excited to be back on the pod. So let's jump into it, man.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, last we heard from you, you were playing in Serbia and things are going well. So give our viewers and our listeners an update on how things are going in your career.
Yeah, everything's been going great. The season in Serbia was 2 years ago. This past season, I played in Russia actually for a team called NSA, and it was another pretty successful year for the team. And myself, it wasn't too bad. But I actually just recently signed just a few days ago to go play in Taiwan for the Formosa Dreamers. So for those who are following Formosa Dreamers, and that's kind of been the last 2 years of basketball for me. Serbia to Russia, now Taiwan. So I'm adding another passport stamp and all that good stuff to the book, which is exciting and fun. And it's a new culture, new continent, even. So it'll be a whole new experience, basketball wise and off the court, which my wife and I were super pumped about and excited to kind of dive into that culture and just really embrace it and just see how it goes. I mean, we're living the dream, living the life. So to have this opportunity is a blessing. And this is going to be year 9. So as a professional, so it's crazy. It's been almost a decade now, and just enjoying it every moment that we can.
It sneaks up on you fast for sure, but I know we talked about it a little bit last time, your college journey, and then you played a little bit in the summer league and the G League, and then going overseas, and we talked a little bit about the differences at those levels. But now that you've played, because you've played in Germany and in Serbia and in Russia, and now you're going to play in Taiwan, so you don't have a grasp of how that is different yet. But how would you say the different international stops you've made have differed from each other?
Yeah, one of the big things is each country has its own little style or unique kind of way they like to teach and kind of play the game. Like for example, in Germany, it's a little more athletic, faster paced, up and down, more threes. Serbia and Russia, a lot of bigger guys are on the court, so it kind of slows the game down a little bit, especially against certain teams. So the physicality goes up, possessions become slower. You're working till the last couple seconds of the shot clock mainly. So Greece was the same way, lower scoring games, which would resemble kind of like 90s, early 2000s basketball sometimes. So,
what
um,
what some would think would be the golden age, but
yeah, exactly. Some people love it, some people don't. I mean, to me, it's basketball. It's all the same. You play the plays, you execute the way you got to do it. And in the end, it's still basketball. Obviously, Taiwan, I've never been. I've known some guys that have played there. The Asian culture is a little different, especially with the rules. There's a few different rules, like you can only have 2 import players on the court at one time. For
ooh,
example, in
interesting.
Russia, you could have all 5 players on the court be imports. So, the play is different based on that because, I grew up learning the game a certain way. The other import on the game or on the court learned playing the game a certain way. And then there's going to be 3 Taiwanese players that, have learned it a completely different way. So that would be the biggest adjustment, I think, in Taiwan, just kind of feeling out what it is that those players know best and what they do best and how they get the most out of them for me and from them. So, yeah, I mean, it's basketball in the end of the day, Roman. You know that. I mean, it's not like a huge thing. We can break it down as much as we want, but as long as you're, trying, focusing, and really doing what the coach is asking, watching some games on the side, and following the scout. It's all basketball. Most of the stuff is the same. It's just who's better than the other.
I feel like that is the most interesting part about, the differences. We know that the styles are different, that kind of thing, but like that there's import situations. Like if
Hmm.
you tell a coach like, oh, these all these players are on your roster, but you can only play these players at this time. Is kind of
Yeah.
crazy. Like imagine if the NBA had that rule. Like the Nuggets would not have won their championship because I believe Jamal Murray is Canadian, so they wouldn't have been able
Hmm.
to have Jamal Murray and Jokic on the floor at the same time, which is 90% of the reason they won that championship, right? So
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's a. It's the NBA doesn't have a rule like that. So some teams would be penalized for that in the NBA. And you're like, wait, Jokic and Murray can't play together? Like they're the only two imports allowed to be on the court. Like maybe it doesn't affect every team, but in Europe, that's just the rules. Every country's a little bit different with those things. And Taiwan is going to be the biggest difference. Like I said, only two on the court. So usually I've been used to three or four. I mean, it won't be a huge difference. I'm sure the talent level is just a little different. And I don't think it will really change a whole lot, but it's just one of those things you got to adjust to.
But yeah, so it's really interesting to talk about all the differences between countries. Like I said last time, we talked about the difference between U.S. style and then going to the other countries. And you mentioned that in Russia there were some bigger guys on the court, and it reminded me. I believe you told me a story last time you were here about when you first played. I think in the summer league, and you ended up next to Wayne Ellington. Was that am I remembering that correctly? That you had that you either ended up on the court with or against Wayne Ellington, and that was your idea of like, oh, this is different. This guy's bigger.
So Wayne Ellington was on the Nets, but it was actually Brooke Lopez and Luis Scola that really just like, oh my gosh, these
Well,
guys are
yeah,
massive.
yeah, culture shock. Yeah, for sure.
It's just like,
Um,
goodness gracious, big
but
dudes, just huge.
so we have a lot of different basketball topics we want to talk about in this one, but before we get to there, last time you were with us, I believe the very next week we had an interview with your old college coach,
Hmm.
Coach Driscoll, and you and I had some fun talking about that interview afterwards.
Yeah.
What do you remember about watching that interview?
Well, I mean, obviously, Coach Driscoll is the biggest ball of energy in the world. So it's hard not to listen to Coach and watch Coach interact with you and anybody else and just be glued to the screen, or
And
like
100%.
just completely locked in. So, I mean, his basketball mind is amazing. But what makes Coach Driscoll even better is that he's just one of the greatest people on earth. Just salt of the earth kind of guy. He will do anything for you at the drop of a hat. And then, I mean, he's been literally in every profession at every level, everywhere in the country. Yeah, I mean, it's just
100%.
amazing. So, like the stories you get from Coach Driscoll, you're like, no way, this dude is Division I basketball coach from starting there in Pittsburgh cleaning bathrooms at a McDonald's. It's like it
Right.
doesn't even add up. So, like that's when you take away a Coach Driscoll interview, especially one with like Roman, who's another UNF guy, like you're just gonna have so many stories that you're just not gonna get from anywhere else really. And
And I was
he has a new one every day, it feels like.
and I was just in Pittsburgh, which obviously that's where Coach is from, and I was texting him getting recommendations of where to go, what to
Oh
do,
yeah, you have to. You
and
have to. He knows them all.
and uh, and he gave us a bunch of stuff. But sometimes when you get a text from Coach, you have to decipher it because
Oh, sure do.
he texts like he talks, which is so fast that sometimes there's no periods, so you don't know where a
Oh,
sentence stops
it's
and starts. So you have to reread a message a few times to be
oh,
like,
definitely.
oh,
It's
this is what
100%.
he meant. Right.
If if you were to submit that into an English class, it would be a 0 out of 100. It'd be all over the place. But once you know Coach, you start to figure out where periods and commas should and shouldn't be in the text messages.
And one of the funny things he told us about in his interview was during his days as an assistant coach under Scott Drew at Baylor,
Hmm.
where the team was struggling and they were trying to get them, fired up to get on a run, and they decided like, hey, let's shave our heads. And he's talking about him and Coach Jerome Tang, who is at Penn State right now, and that they all got on board with it and they started winning. And then I go and I read Coach Drew's book, Road to
Hmm.
Joy, and that same story is in there. And I'm like,
Yeah,
hey,
there
I
it
know what
is.
he's talking about. That's crazy. Interviewing Coach and Coach, if you listen to this, we love you. But
Yes.
I had prepared questions for him the same way I had for you, and I'd ask a question, and then he would just go,
Yeah.
and it would be several minutes of great answers, great stories, and I would forget the question that I asked him
Yeah.
because
That happens a lot.
it'd be like 10 minutes later, and I'd be like,
Yes.
what did I ask? Because the answer would end in a different spot,
No,
somewhere
it's
completely
that's a
different
Coach Driscoll.
than where the question began.
Yeah,
And you're
no,
just
that's
like,
that's the special. That's what he does best. You
oh,
have
and
no idea where the question's going to go.
that's what makes for a great interview.
Yes.
a couple of years ago, he was in Pittsburgh to play Pitt with UNF,
Yeah.
and they gave him the interview. I'm sure you remember this interview. He had the pregame interview, I think it was. I don't know if it was pregame or postgame, and he spent the entire interview talking about basketball, Pitt
Yeah.
basketball,
Yeah.
and
Not
like
UNF.
what
Pitt.
yeah, not UNF, Pitt. And it's like that's only coach would do that.
Yeah.
But getting to talk to him is always fun, whether it be over text or an interview. And like you
Yes.
said, he's always up to do whatever he
Yeah.
can for you. And he's the only person I know that would give, especially in the position that he's in, that would give his personal cell phone number to every student that
Oh, it's
walks through
amazing.
the door at UNF every year.
I mean, it's a different person to be able to do that. I'm not giving my phone number out to 10, I don't know how many people come to UNF every year, but let's say thousands of 18-year-olds. I think I'm
Yeah.
good on that.
But yeah, Coach is one of a kind. If any
Yeah.
of our listeners or viewers out there ever get a chance to meet Coach Matthew Driscoll, you won't forget it anytime soon. Speaking of Coach and college basketball, a lot has been said in the last few years of, part of the international basketball game growing is a lot of high school students go over and play there instead of going to college, or they go to the G League instead of going to college. And a lot of people would consider the NCAA to be broken right now. But what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on the status of college basketball at the moment?
Well, it's changing daily, it seems like. It's the wild, wild west. I'm, you know, probably taking words from other people's mouths, but I think that's just the best way to describe it. It's so chaotic. Um, I love the player freedom to be able to transfer. I mean, coaches have it, so the players should have it too. It only makes sense. It's yeah, I think it's good in a way that, kids are being able to get the coaching, get the money, obviously, and play basketball at the level that they can play at. But when you're 18 years old, I think money can sometimes the blind that player and just kind of make it more difficult for them to succeed, and also make it more difficult then for the schools to succeed. So it's I think it's the right thing to do to play players, let them transfer, do all that good stuff. That makes sense to me. It's just, there's got to be a better way to teach and educate the kids that are going to these schools for the money, trying to do this, trying to do that off the court. And it's when you're 18, there's no way I could have handled that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been a pro now for 9 years, and it's like these kids are having now to become professionals at 17 years old in high school, even before they even go to college. Like, that's a lot to ask of someone that's 17 with, really no knowledge of what it's like in the real world, how to handle these. Like, you're signing contracts. You don't sign contracts like that when you're that young. No one really does. So it's tough for college basketball. It's a bad look because I don't think there's any rules. It's tough to put rules in. It's tough to regulate all this stuff, but it's a scary place to be because there's so many unknowns, and there's really no answers that seem plausible, or at least in the pipeline to come down and really help within this year, next year, the year after. So, but like I said, I love that guys can get paid. I think that's awesome. They should. Schools make so much money. Same with, transfer. You should be able to go to where you want, but the money aspect is, it just makes things so murky and in the gray area. And it's just, there's no rules. It's tough. When you get cut as a pro, you get cut. You don't get any more money. You have to go find another job. That's kind of what college is, but it's like you have to honor it and guarantee. I don't know any of those things. It's just too much for me.
I think it's a double-edged sword where it's like, yeah, the players deserve to have the same freedom that coaches do and this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it definitely, I feel like, hurts the product because it's hard, this last year, and we'll get more into the women's game in a minute, but this last year, the women's game surpassed the men's tournament
Hmm.
in viewership. And I think it's a large part because, yes, Caitlin Clark, yes, Angel Reese and those kind of players, but like, what you're getting when you turn it on. Like
Yeah.
it seems like year to year rosters are completely different. So you have no
Yes.
idea who people are
Yeah.
because guys are like, oh, I played 12 minutes instead of 15 minutes. I'm gonna go transfer somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or
No, you're
and
right.
so guys are just leaving at the drop of a hat without any penalty. They could play for three schools in 3 years, and you don't even know if they're still playing because it's like, oh, they went from Kentucky to South Carolina to Eastern Washington. Like, how am I
Yeah,
supposed to follow that? And I think that's
yeah,
why we've seen in not just college basketball, but college football, you've seen a lot of these
yeah.
coaches that are on the backside of their careers, like Coach K and Roy Williams and Nick Saban, be like, you know what? I've succeeded. I don't want to deal with the minefield that is transferring and NIL and that kind of thing. So I'm going to walk away. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just so difficult to build a roster um, in all these sports today because if one of your younger players has a really great season, well, they're going to enter the portal and see if they can get paid more money by somebody else. That's just what happens now. So that person you found out of high school now is, basically you're just the farm team. You're the double A team for all these bigger schools. And it might not even be a bigger school. It might just be like, hey, look, I only played 12 minutes at Kentucky, but I'll go play 20 at, like you had mentioned, South Carolina. Well, now I want to go play 30. So where can I play 30 minutes at? And now it's just guys are bouncing, bouncing, bouncing. And
Yeah,
it's impossible to follow somebody. And, this might be controversial, might not, but I think everyone in college sports and athletics today feels that it's cool to enter the transfer portal. Like, I'm gonna put my name in there. I'm gonna get my Instagram post, my social media post out that says, thank you to the teams, coaches, staffs, but I'm entering the portal. All like they love that
yeah.
kind of post post that. Like,
I
okay,
mean, at this
cool. But like
at this,
now it just makes it so much more difficult for everyone else because everyone thinks it's cool. So now every student athlete is in the portal. So now you're all doing the same things and you're just trying to get recruited again out of high school when we all know how difficult that is already. So now
right.
you're just doing it again year after year after year. And it's just, I don't understand why you want to do it, especially if you found a spot. Now I understand when you don't find a spot that works for you and isn't helping you get to where you want to go. So I'm all for that. But I think a lot of it is just the cool factor. And now you can't follow people. Could you name one person on Kentucky's roster this right now since Cal
I
left? No, couldn't
I
tell you one.
no, I couldn't have named one in the last 3 years.
That's what I mean.
I feel like the one and done has gotten a lot worse too. It's like
Yep.
people go to college to get to the NBA, but some of those people need more than a year.
Yeah. Would you
And it seems,
say
yeah.
would you say it's better then for those one and dones to just go to college, wherever it may be, it doesn't matter. They all know they're going NBA anyways, but should they just go turn pro instead?
Um, it depends. I think when I think back a few years ago, I'm reminded immediately of RJ Hampton,
Oh, yeah.
who who coming out of high school was projected to be within the next year possibly the number one overall pick.
Hmm.
And then he goes to play, I think in New Zealand. It was around the same time
Yep.
that LaMelo Ball was doing it, and they
Yep.
went to both play in New Zealand. And he made it to the NBA, and I think he ended up being like a mid first round pick.
Yep. To the
And
Magic.
ever since then, he's been kind of buried as a role player. I think it is a kind of it's a like I said, it's a minefield where it's like
Yeah.
you do have to make the best choice for yourself, but at the same time, and this might be controversial, is if you are a guy that goes to three colleges in 3 years or two colleges in 3 years, I would see that if I was an NBA coach or an NBA GM, I would see that as a warning that maybe you're not the most coachable guy
Hmm.
because you're out there looking out for yourself every
Hmm.
single time that you are and that's not to discount if it's a bad situation, there's
Of
bad
course.
situations out there, but it would tell me at a glance that you're looking out for yourself, that you weren't there long enough to get consistent coaching from anyone,
Yeah.
that and it reminds me of Monty Williams being fired by the Pistons after a year. It's like that
Yeah.
team is bad, has a lot of
Yes.
really good players, but needs consistent coaching, needs a
Yeah.
culture that they haven't had since the early 2000s when they were winning those championships.
Yep.
And if you bring in a guy like Monty Williams, who's obviously a great coach, obviously has NBA Finals experience, and you fire him after 1 year, what did you want him to do? What was he supposed to do in one
Yeah.
year with a roster of a bunch of young guys that don't know how to win because a lot of those guys only played one year in college. A lot of those guys
Yeah.
transferred. A lot of those guys played overseas after high school. Like it's all these guys coming from different spots, not having that coaching consistency in their life
Yeah.
up to that point, and now you're bringing them to the NBA, put them on a bad team whose culture is non-existent with a GM and front office that doesn't seem to know what they're doing as far as building a culture, and then you finally get him the right coach. They win 14 games in the first season, and he's out.
Yeah.
Like, how can you expect any player at any level to grow in any way
No, you
if
can't.
if there's
Can't.
constant changes either from their address or their coaches or whatever?
No.
That,
No, I mean,
that I think is the main problem.
I agree completely. It's as a pro, I mean, I've switched teams pretty much every year of my career except for 1 year. So, but as a pro, I understand that I'm switching because one, I want to make more money.
Right.
Two, the team might not want me back. And the team and I both understand it's just a 1 year deal and we'll reconvene in the summer and see where we stand. So everyone's on the same page there. College, that's where it becomes different. In the NBA too, is like you give out these 4, 5, 6 year deals, and then after 1 year, you're cutting guys.
Yeah.
How can you really get an idea of what's going to happen? It's been one season. I mean, the NBA doesn't get to practice during the season because there's so many games. So you like Monty probably only got to coach them for like 2.5 months.
Yeah.
September, October, and then that was about it. That was
And
the
they
whole
only
practice time.
and they only won 14 games, but they actually played together well a lot. They were in a lot of games that they lost.
I
Like
like
they
how they
lost a lot of
finished.
close
Yeah,
games.
I like how
Yeah.
they finished the season. Just watching them. I mean, I thought Jaden Ivey really was taking steps, but to start
Mhm.
the year, he wasn't even playing. It's like, all right,
No.
well, maybe that's a Monty Williams problem. Okay, fair enough. But at the end of the season, it seemed like it started going a little better. I mean, obviously, 14 games is no one's goal or objective,
No.
like for an NBA season. So we
But
can't
then
say it was
again,
positive.
the Pistons haven't won more than 23 games since 2018. So
Which I mean, that's the thing. You look at it; they have 100 wins in 5 years. Like that's not very good. The
no,
Celtics
it's
just won
terrible.
80 games in a season. The
Yeah.
Pistons won 105 years. So like, it's not very good. But I agree. I think I love what Charlotte did, hiring Charles Lee. I think him like he's going to build a culture in Charlotte, and I think they're going to give him those 4 or 5 years to build that culture and develop those younger guys and these high draft picks. They got Lamelo, Brandon Miller. They got the dude from France. I can't pronounce his name right now, so I'm sorry about that. But they're going to
Yeah.
develop these guys and bring them along. And I think Charles Lee will be a great job at that. And I hope he gets the freedom to do that because he was clearly doing something right in Boston for the last few years as an assistant for Missoula and Brad Stevens because Boston had 10 guys in the rotation and all of them are their own guys for the most part, except for they traded for Drew and they traded for KP.
Yeah.
And Derek White was a trade, but even him, he got better in the last 2 years that he's been with Boston. So you're like, something on that staff is clicking. And for Charlotte to get him as a hire, I think it made a lot of sense. And I think it's going to be really good for Charlotte. And I was hoping Detroit would do the same kind of thing with Monty, but they gave him 10 months and he's fired.
Yeah. This is not what I originally was going to talk about, but I it reminded me when you were talking about it mostly being their own guys. We're kind of coming out of the era of super teams, right?
Yep.
Which was kind of a low point for a lot of people in the NBA was like just do and a lot of people want to say that LeBron created super teams and all this sort of stuff. And then those want to say you want to say that LeBron created super teams. Look at, Showtime Lakers and look at the 86 Celtics
I
and
was going to say 86 Celtics.
look at the 90s Bulls and look at all these teams and the Spurs and '03 Pistons and I had to say stop and kind of let's draw a line here because there's a difference between a super team and a well-run organization.
100%.
And the line to me, I've always said this, is the Chicago Bulls drafted Scottie Pippen, they drafted Michael Jordan, they drafted Horace Grant. And then when Horace Grant left, they when Horace Grant left and John Paxson left, and all they filled in the pieces they needed by going and getting Dennis Rodman and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And the Spurs, they signed Tony Parker as an international signee. They signed Manu Ginobili. They drafted Tim Duncan as a compliment to David Robinson. And then
Mm-hmm.
when those guys got older, they drafted Kawhi. And they brought in these guys. And then, with the exception of the Kevin Durant years, the Warriors drafted
They drafted
everybody.
everybody.
The fine line is built versus bought. A super team is
Yes,
bought.
it's
A
a great way
well-run
to put it.
organization is built.
Yeah, you're
And
now a super team. How you're in your category, how you're saying it, I agree completely. Is the Clippers the last 5 years?
and I
That was a
believe
bought team.
the super team honestly started with the '08 Celtics. So I'm not going to put that all on LeBron, but LeBron was the second big one for
Well, that's
sure.
the thing. He realized I'm not gonna beat those three guys. I better get somewhere where I can. And again, Miami is another really well run organization. They played their cards right in the sense we drafted Dwayne Wade and Udonis Haslem and Mario Chalmers.
Right.
You have some guys, I mean, Wade is obviously a Hall of Famer, but like Haslem and Chalmers, like those are great role players to have on a team. And you have cap space now for LeBron and Bosh, and obviously, that is a super team. But what was Boston? Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and KG. Come on, like I mean, maybe not the level. There's levels of all time greatness, but come on, they're
Right.
just as good. And not that Boston started it, because, like you said, it happened in the early 2000s, happens in the 90s, it happened in the 80s. It's been happening every decade. You know what I mean? There's always a super team.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about culture is like Miami is a prime example of culture because when Miami won the championship with Dwayne Wade and Shaq in '06, Pat Riley was the coach. And then
Hmm.
and then he takes a step back and becomes the president. And then LeBron shows up and obviously Wade is there and Bosh and they do the whole thing and they hire this kind of no-name guy who was in the video room to be their coach. And you're like, okay, that is this just to let LeBron run the show or what is this? And then they won their championships, and then LeBron left, and then Dwayne Wade got older, and then Bosh had his injury issues,
Hmm.
and and as they had to retool that team, there never really was a major drop off like we've seen
Yeah,
with after Garnett and those guys left Boston, after
yeah.
all the Bulls disbanded, after all the like they
Pistons even.
there wasn't that. Oh, the Pistons have been dropping since '04. um
Yeah,
but the Heat culture has kept that franchise at their lowest as a playoff contender
yeah,
since '06.
yeah. You're right.
And it's gone through Shaq and Wade to the big three um to Jimmy Butler to
Yeah,
now we're probably looking towards the end of Jimmy Butler, and Spoelstra's still there. So
still
obviously
there.
Pat Riley saw something in this video room guy,
Yeah.
and it is the blueprint of a culture.
Yes.
And I
100%.
even talked about this a couple weeks ago on the podcast. Is like the Pistons could look at the Heat and be like, how do you expect to build a culture if everything's changing every other year?
You can't.
If these young players who are at their most crucial time of growth is
Yeah.
are seeing new coaches and teammates every single year, like it
Yeah,
doesn't
there's no
make
chance. They have no chance. And that's the college game. It trickles down.
So speaking of dynasties and speaking of the Celtics just won their championship. They
Hmm.
the seemingly long-awaited championship
Yeah.
of the Tatum and Brown era, and they did it in a way that is what we're talking about. They did it in a culture way, and I think that has a lot to do with Brad Stevens and kind of the genius that he is. Having Tatum and Brown in place amidst all the noise of you should break them up. They can't play together. And Boston was like, no, these are our guys.
Yeah.
And then they traded away Marcus Smart after many years, a move a lot of people didn't like. And they traded away Robert Williams. And it was like, what are they going to do defensively? What are they going to do?
Hmm.
They go bring in Drew Holiday and they immediately sign him to a long contract. They bring in Kristaps Porzingis and they build kind of the way you're supposed to build. Like you're not looking for the huge name, the big star. You're filling in the gaps that you
Hmm.
need.
Yeah.
And they have that championship.
Yeah. No, the way Boston stuck with Brown and Tatum is you have to pat them on the back. That's just awesome, because in the media for the last few years, them losing to the 8 seed Miami last year and
Mm.
almost getting swept and then almost winning the series, but still losing a game 7 at home. It's like, can you actually win with these two? And the answer is yeah. It's not just two guys that build the team. They need a full roster. And Rob Williams always being hurt, that hurt the Celtics. So
Yeah.
for them, It's not that Marcus wasn't crucial to the team and the success as well, but he was injury prone as well, and his jump shot was a little unreliable from time to time. So, you know, it wasn't that they obviously drafted those two, but then they're like, look, there's players on the market that we can upgrade with, and it's not going to cost the team that much more, financially and capital wise to go get them. So that's just Boston, like you said, and Brad Stevens' genius of like, look, we can get, maybe just 1 or 2% better, which obviously they clearly did because they just won the championship. And that's all you need sometimes when you're at that high of a level. It's not a big splash, not a big
Right.
change. It's just
I mean,
around the fringes.
it's the exact opposite of what we saw in Phoenix, and we know that Phoenix was a
100%.
disaster. Phoenix was a disaster. It was a lot of what we saw in LeBron's early days in LA, where they were just plugging in Russell Westbrook, plugging in
Yeah.
Carmelo Anthony, plugging in. It's like it's not about that. Like look at Phoenix, like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. Nobody's arguing those aren't great players, but you
Great
basically have
players.
three. You basically have three of the same player,
Well, that's another
and
thing. You have three of that. And because of the salaries, now you're getting guys that are just being cycled through and through and through and through. And they all know those guys come into the team and they're like, look, we just have to play well and we'll get another
and,
contract. A lot of those guys are on their last contracts in the NBA.
and you have no
Yeah,
depth whatsoever. So if one of those three players goes down, what do you have?
exactly. And Bradley Beal missed what, probably 30 games this year. So you
I
pay
think
the
Bradley
guy.
Beal's missed 30 games for the last 5 years. Like
Well, yeah, well, that's another thing.
he's like a guaranteed miss of almost half a season. But then you look at, you mentioned the Clippers earlier. Like when Paul George left, it was like those two accomplished nothing together. Nothing.
Yeah, the one
Uh,
time they went to the Western Conference Finals, Kawhi was hurt and Paul George was playing out of his mind. And like they never even played in the Western Finals together. They
right.
only made it to the second round once together.
And I actually think Paul George is going to do really well in Philly because he'll be the third option.
Well, that's the thing. He's going to be
You
the
know, I
wing.
think,
Philly hasn't had Tobias Harris is good, but Paul George's creative
yeah.
playmaking ability is at a whole nother level than Tobias Harris. And for him to be that wing guy with a two-man pick and roll, Maxi and Embiid, that's the perfect spot for him to get to and play because he can be on that wing and no one's going to leave him. They're not going to let Paul George shoot a three. So now he gives more space to Maxi and Embiid because there's less help. But at the same time, if Paul George is attacking closeouts, like he's going to be really good. And it's going to be hard
Yeah.
for any team to stop Embiid. He's an MVP guy. He's one of the only 7-footers in the world that can shoot threes, has touch, can handle. I mean, he's a beast. He's an MVP for a reason.
But now
Maxi
to,
can score with the best.
but now you're risking the same issue.
You are as Phoenix.
Yeah, and they handled it a lot better than Phoenix did, but you're risking the same issue
Agreed.
as Phoenix is two of your three main guys, and luckily for Philly, the third guy is
He's
Tyrese
young.
Maxey.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's young and he can
but two
go.
of the three guys have had a laundry list of injuries
And
just in
then
the
not only
last
that,
handful
they're
of years.
in the handful of years, but also I think Embiid is 10th NBA season and Paul George is 14th. Embiid might be in his 12th NBA season, technically, because you don't count his first 2 years because he didn't even play. So
Yeah,
really 10 playing NBA seasons, but it's 12 since he's been drafted. You're like,
yeah.
guys, you think about that. That's a long time to be playing. That's a lot of miles, a lot of games.
Speaking of cultures and speaking of coaches and things, I had to ask you, what are your thoughts on JJ to the Lakers?
Well, I'm happy for him. I mean, I think he's obviously with his podcast and what he's done on like NBA pregame and postgame shows with ESPN. He obviously knows the game. There's no doubting JJ Redick knows the game. So from an X's and O standpoint, he'll be fine. Um, but when you're in the Lakers and the head coach, and we kind of saw Steve Nash when he went to Brooklyn after Kenny Atkinson. It's tough, man. Like when you've never done it at that level with superstars on the team, and in
Yeah,
this case, Braun and AD, and then you throw Bronny into the mix now that he got drafted. It's just there's going to be a circus every day of media around you, and it's never gonna. There, no one's ever going to ask JJ basketball questions anymore, like they had when he was on his podcast and on TV.
yeah,
Now they're gonna what's the plan for Bronny this week? Anthony
yeah.
Davis, he only took 4 mid-range jump shots. Are you trying to tell him to shoot only threes now because that's what you did? And it's like no, like I'm just playing the best lineups, the best plays to put the guys in the best position, but no one's going to ask him that. So I hope he does well. I just don't going to the Lakers as your first job, and he's played with all the guys on the team. Basically, it's like we'll
And
see. I don't know.
like my biggest concern with it was I have no doubt he's going to be a good coach. He reminds me of Steve Kerr. He reminds me of Eric Spoelstra.
I can see it. I can see it. Yeah,
He reminds me of those kind of guys that just are brilliant basketball minds. But what and also what do they always say about players being coaches in the NBA? It's never the stars.
no,
It's
it
ne
can't. Well, that's the thing. It can't be because
it's always the guys that were around the stars because they understand how to get open. They understand when it's their turn. They understand the
those are the
importance of
guys that
playing
make the
your role, right?
difference. Yeah,
Right.
those are the guys that make the difference because the stars are the stars. I mean, they're going to do what they do night in and night out of greatness. But if you can get the other five guys around you, six guys around you to elevate their level closer to that stars level,
And
that's
that's
what you
why,
need a coach to do. And that's what JJ was doing with the Clippers, with Philadelphia, with Orlando. All those teams made deep playoff runs year after year after year. So it's like, okay, well, clearly he understands what it takes to elevate his own game as the
right,
fourth, fifth option. So I
right.
would have
And
loved to see him go to a young team rather than the
that's why
Lakers,
like that that's why like Magic Johnson's short tenure into a head coach didn't go well. And you
No.
know,
And same with Larry Bird.
Larry Bird and that's why Michael's tenure as a GM hasn't gone great. And that's why you could if you wanted to call LeBron the GM of the Lakers, that hasn't gone great. And
Yeah,
and
I would say you do.
and Jason Kidd's first tenure didn't go well, and Steve
But see,
Nash's first tenure hasn't gone well, and
well,
like and
it's
that
just
kind of
fun.
thing.
You brought up Kid. Kid's really the only one to have a second and third opportunity, and now it's kind of going well.
Right, exactly.
So
But
all the other
but
guys are done. There is no more coaching after their one,
right.
two, three
I mean,
seasons. You know what I mean? It's over.
we haven't even heard about Steve Nash getting another chance, right?
He's not coming
It's
back. He's done.
no,
He's over. I
right.
tried it. I'm done. I'm
No,
not doing this. This is
no, it's over. And there's a lot to be said with that. JJ knows how to play his role. Steve Kerr knew how to play his role, and I think
yeah.
he's going to be a great coach. The problem is that it's a players' league, and I think that's one of the reasons that Steve Nash didn't work is because he came in and Kevin Durant and James Harden and Kyrie ran that team, and they ran it into the ground and all the sort of stuff. But also the Lakers, you could argue, aren't desirable right now, which is a crazy
No,
thing to talk
I
about.
agree.
As
You're right.
but
LA, they're not
but
desirable.
but it's like okay, so you have LeBron James who's on the tail end of his career, maybe 2 years left. He just signed the 2 year contract.
Hmm.
You got Anthony Davis who's really good when he's there, but and
Again,
then,
he's in
and then you
his
had all
double
this
digit years in the league, getting
and then you
older.
had
It's
all this
tough.
stuff about LeBron said don't make your coaching hire based on me,
Everyone
he
knows that's not true.
but he makes a comment about how much he likes Dan Hurley, and then they go and they go
Try
and
to get
they
him.
try to get him, and he chose to stay in the admittedly broken NCAA
Oh
world of
yeah,
NCAA rather than go to the Los Angeles Lakers. And then that didn't happen. So then it was like, oh, JJ, that's LeBron's guy. They have the podcast together. And then that's when LeBron doubled down and said, don't hire off of me. But at that time, Monty Williams became available, and they were like, oh, well, if you want us to build around Anthony Davis, this is his guy. This is the guy he loves. This is the guy that coached him in
yeah,
New Orleans, and then the guy that no one's ever said a bad word about. If you want to build around him, you go get Monty Williams. He's experienced. He can do
yeah,
this. Then they immediately hire JJ after that.
yeah.
It's like you can't say don't make your choices around me because we're watching those choices fall into place directly for you. And then JJ's second draft pick as a head coach is your son.
Hard
And
to defend that.
and they have basically the same roster as last year
Yeah,
when they got beat in five against the Nuggets. You could argue that the Lakers actually played better in the series as a whole, but they still
yeah,
lost in 5 games. And then
yeah.
all you added was Dalton Connect and Bronny James, which Dalton Connect is the shooter they need, and I do think Bronny James will be a good player in time.
Exactly.
But
In time. Agreed.
but I feel like there's no way that JJ can win here. Because if they
No,
do
there's no
well and
way.
they win, if they do well and they win, it's gonna be like, oh, LeBron. Give all the credit to LeBron.
Well, that's the thing.
And
JJ can only do so much coaching wise because the roster is so limited. Their biggest issues are spacing and defense. LeBron's older; he can't play defense like he used to, understandably. He still has to carry the load offensively, playmaking and scoring wise. because D'Angelo Russell's spot up shooter. Reeves is good at playmaking, but I don't think anyone's putting him in one of the top playmakers in the league category. Same with D'Angelo Russell, and then Anthony Davis, same thing. So all these
And they're in
guys
the
are
West, and the
looking
West
to
is really tough,
that's a
really
whole
tough,
different animal.
and got tougher.
The
Got
West is a joke. It's so good, the West, but that's what makes the Lakers' job tough, and it's a lose lose for JJ, in my opinion, because the Lakers are championship or bust every year with LeBron on
right,
the roster,
right,
and the roster they have is not championship contenders. So that just
not
puts
at all.
JJ as the fall guy.
And the only way it would be is if they, because they don't have the money, is if they traded some of the bench pieces they have. But if they do that, then they don't
Well,
have
then
the
they,
depth that you need to win a championship. So
and when LeBron's 40 years old, you need probably more depth around him than you would rather want another star, even though you need the star because LeBron's great still. I mean, someone that played this long and put up the same stats he's doing is incredible, but
I mean,
it's
he's
it's just not the
great,
same
but
impact.
and he's been extremely durable in his career. But as we've seen the last couple of years, when you're almost 40 years old, that you it can't hold up, and
Well,
he hasn't
for
held up
80,
the last few years, right?
well, exactly, and for 82 regular season games, coupled with another 20, maybe 30, almost 30 playoff games. I mean, that's tough, man. That's 110 game season that the Lakers need LeBron to be great in every night to have
Right.
that chance. And that's just a lot to ask at his age. And he's obviously doing still a great job, but we've seen LeBron
But
better. He's
right,
not at his peak. Everyone would agree he's not at his peak
no,
anymore, but he's still
no.
amazing, which is a testament to him and his longevity and just his career as a whole.
Speaking of the West getting better, who are your NBA draft winners and losers? We're now about a week and a half out from the draft. Who would you say won or maybe didn't do what you would hope they were doing?
Yeah. So initially, this is going to be kind of a two-parter.
Mm,
San Antonio, I really loved Stephen Castle for them at 4. Just they needed a guard, and he's a guard that wants to defend, tough, and he cares about winning. And San Antonio needs to build that winning culture up with
right.
young guys, and to have him and Wemby like really care about winning, I think that's great.
And now they got
Um,
CP3.
and now CP3. So they're really building something up that's like, oh, well, Stephen Castle said he wanted to be a point guard in pre-draft. Now they get Chris Paul. Chris Paul, teach this guy how to be a point guard then and let's
Yeah.
run. Like Devin Vassell, we like him on the wing. We like Keldon Johnson. Like we like a few of our other pieces. Let's learn together and build it from the ground up.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think we could potentially see a rare exception to the star rule as a head coach because Tim Duncan has been an assistant there for a while, and it's kind
yeah.
of been alluded to the fact that whenever Pop decides he's done, Tim Duncan will be the guy. And I think the only reason that works is because Tim Duncan has always been seen as something of a boring star. Like he's kind of boring.
Yes. And
And
but boring wins. That's the thing.
right, boring
It goes back
wins.
to our consistency of an organization and management. Look at the Heat, Pat Riley to Spoelstra. That's been the last 20 years.
Boring wins.
It
But
does. I mean, it
but
just
I
does. But back on the
yeah.
San Antonio thing, how you asked winners and losers, that pick was a win because of this Chris Paul signing all that stuff after. I wish they would have kept Rob Dillingham too, though.
Yeah,
I
which right.
The unpredictability of his game, I like. Now, obviously, maybe it doesn't fit personal, culture wise, whatever. Okay, the Spurs know more than I do, but I thought his skill set would have been really good in San Antonio. But then that goes to my next winner of Minnesota. For Minnesota to go get that kind of skill set is
Yeah,
awesome. Like they need
that
that guard, dynamic guard, a younger guard, because Ant is obviously going to be a guy for a long time. So if
yeah.
you can find any other guard to pair with him, that's a win. And
That's
I think
definitely
Dillingham has it. He at least has
that's
a chance.
definitely my winner for sure. Because like you said, they got Dillingham at 8 because they didn't have a pick until 27 because they were
I know
obviously really good. And then they go and get a guy who before the season was being talked about as possibly the number one. Like
exactly.
they got a number one.
The
And
talent is there to be a number one pick. So it's like, hey, look, if you have that much talent in a guy, they kind of did it with Anthony Edwards. No one knew he was going to be
right.
this good, but the talent
Yeah.
was there. Well,
Yeah.
you just got another dude, maybe not as physically gifted, but skill wise,
Two. Did you see who they got at 27?
it was
Terrence
27
Shannon
again.
Jr. from
Oh,
Illinois.
that's right. Yeah. Well,
And
Steve
so
Terrence Shannon Jr., he's
and
also
so
24, though. It's a little different
but
timetable, but I agree. He's a good player. He
but
can do it all.
the way I also see that is you watched Minnesota in the playoffs, and I was really rooting for them. But they even talked about like, oh, we kind of built this team to beat Denver, and it
Yeah.
took everything. It took everything they had to do it.
Yeah,
And so
sure did.
by the time they got to Dallas, they were worn out.
Yeah.
And outside of Anthony Edwards, there wasn't really a reliable second scorer. And so Anthony Edwards was obviously, I think he was even dealing with some minor injuries, so he was hobbled and he was tired. And so when he couldn't carry the load, there was nobody there to pick it up.
Yeah.
And
They
so
need,
now you have
well, yeah, that's
Rob
the thing.
Dillingham,
Cat should
right?
have been able to, but, it's kind of the Carl Anthony Towns experience for Minnesota since they drafted him.
But now you have Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. that could give you 15 at the drop of a hat, like without
Well,
even thinking
that's,
about it.
and they're both guards, which obviously
Right,
they need. They need dynamic guards, and those two can be
right.
dynamic scoring the ball. So
And,
obviously they
and
still are missing a point guard because I wouldn't
right.
say Dillingham's a point guard. He doesn't really play make, doesn't set others up like Conley does. But you bring him in, Conley's there, the
Well,
kind of the
well,
Chris Paul and Stephen Castle thing.
we're in an era of position with basketball. Maybe one
You're
of them
right.
will be willing to learn to how to
Well,
be more of a point, and
I agree. It's even though it's positionless, someone on the court needs to have that playmaking skill.
right.
And if you give me Minnesota's top five right
And
now,
let's be
and
honest,
Conley's not in it,
it'll probably end up being Anthony Edwards that takes over the point. Let's
but
be
see
he'll pull a James Harden and take over the point.
that well, we've seen the heliocentric basketball of
Yeah,
Harden doing all the scoring and assisting. It can get you there, but we haven't seen someone win the championship yet. You look at
I
Luka,
can
same thing. It
I
hasn't gotten quite there yet. It's still too, you need the team, the Boston. You need everybody chipping in.
What are your thoughts on the most highly anticipated number 55 pick of all time, Bronny James? Give us your full breakdown of
Yeah,
the Prince. Of
yeah, that's a good title. So obviously we have to do our obligatory Bronny
Prince
James.
James. Prince
Yeah,
James.
we have to do our Prince James takes, obviously. So here we go. Huge talent, great genes, great body, great athleticism. I think the injury, well, I guess injury, medical condition, you would
Yeah.
call it at the beginning of the season. I mean, you're 18, 19 years old. That's going to hamper everybody. And
Yeah.
anybody that says it's not going to hamper you, they're lying. Come on, man. You're 18 years old. That's tough to bounce back from and really trust, especially the first time going through something like that. But going to the Lakers, obviously, is suspicious. We'll put it at that. And
Right. But
I
also there was also a rumor out there. I don't
that
know if you
Phoenix
heard
was looking
this.
like him.
Well, they were, and I think Dallas was looking at him too. But
Yeah.
there was a rumor out there that his agent, who's also his father's agent,
Yeah.
was saying he's not going any if anybody but the Lakers draft him, he's going overseas. I
Yeah.
that was a rumor out there.
Yeah. I
But
saw
that
the
could
same rumor. I mean, I
but
think that's just a bluff. I
sure no,
is
100%.
is Bronny James good enough to play in the NBA today? I don't know.
I
The
think
jury's
that
still
he
out.
I think that he is, but the problem is we'll never know
That's the thing. You
because
don't
we'll
truly know because of how it played out.
I
I think at 19 years old and maybe having one or two more years to develop in college would have been more beneficial for him because of how his college career started off with the heart issue. So it
here
takes time for some guys. That's all it is. And the only way to know with Bronny is time.
if I had Bronny's ear, and I've said it on this podcast before, like I said, I think he'll be good with time. But if I were him, I would have, when he announced that he was transferring and declaring that he was in,
Hmm.
that I would have transferred to a college away from California.
Yeah.
Like get as far away from California as you can, because you can't go to UCLA, you can't go, to Cal. Like your father's shadow casts that wide a net. What I just
Hmm.
thought in my head that I thought would have been a good choice: go to Arkansas,
Yeah, go with Cal.
go with Cal, play with Cal for 1 maybe 2 years,
Hmm.
and show everybody that you aren't Jeffrey Jordan. You
Yeah.
aren't, you don't want to be Jeffrey Jordan or Marcus Jordan. Show
See,
everybody that you're different.
yeah, well, you say that, and those guys, they go to UCF and play and have decent college careers. And I think Marcus turned pro, probably went overseas, which is, it's still tough to become a pro. Just for
And
Bronny, he didn't even get to play this year. Too many things
be,
off the court happened.
barely. And then he goes to the combine and he actually does well, but the biggest story that does really well. But the biggest story out of the combine was, oh, he's 3 inches shorter than he's listed at USC.
Well, that's the next thing is what are you actually when you don't pass, shoot, or score at such elite levels at that size? We haven't seen too many guys at that size be successful in the NBA that haven't had huge college numbers. So now you're like, well, what are we doing here? But it's a potential pick. We kind of have the same kind of draft picks every year at 55, but it's somebody from Latvia. Sorry, Latvia. Don't mean to catch a stray bullet there, but you kind of understand. The dude averaged 6 points a game for the Latvian team. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we'll take a flyer on him. Who knows? He's 18. So I guess
But
that's the best way I can give
I
the
feel like
opinion on Bronny James.
I feel like we'll never truly know. Like,
You're
I
right.
mean, we'll be able to watch him play, but any basket he gets, LeBron gets his assist numbers up. Or what if can you imagine what would happen if like LeBron if Bronny's on the floor, Lakers are down by two, and LeBron passes the ball to Bronny for an open three and Bronny misses.
All right, let me tell
Can
you
you
this right now. I'm
can
just
you
going to stop you.
imagine
No, no, I got to stop you. If Bronny's on the court with his dad,
down two?
no, I'd be extremely shocked. I'm saying if they're even on the
No.
court together, I would be
Right.
extremely shocked. The reason I'm saying this is LeBron is option one. Now, where
Yeah.
is Bronny James on the option list for the Lakers roster? 15 probably. So, how many times have you seen option 1 and 15 on the court at the same time in an NBA game? At any point, not just fourth quarter 2 point game, at any point in the
You're
game.
absolutely right.
And I'm not, no disrespect to Bronny, he'll get some minutes, spot minutes, but there's a reason there's rotations and guys come in at certain times. The guys play
You're
with certain
absolutely right.
players. It's not happening. I'm sure it will happen because LeBron can pull a few more strings than most guys,
Right.
getting someone
And
on the
that's
court
why
with
I
them.
think there I then that's why I think there's a legitimate chance it could because like so you could argue that he should be in college still. You could argue that, all the stuff and that he only was picked at 55 because of his dad and all. So like stuff could happen. And you're the basketball guy, rotations,
No,
that kind of
hey,
thing. I'm just here to give you those
yeah.
hypotheticals. Like, can you imagine if this crazy thing played out, the
If it
media circus that
happens,
would happen if
the internet
LeBron
will blow
passes
up.
up a shot, if LeBron passes up a shot and gives it to Bronny and he misses.
Oh, the internet will
That's what I'm
blow up the
saying.
second those two check in together. And if that scenario happens, Twitter will be X, whatever you want to call it, is going to go absolutely nuts.
Well, I saw something that there's a likelihood that he'll play most of the year in the G League
Oh yeah, for
anyway.
sure.
But
Most of those guys in the 50, 60 picks, they're in the G League because they need reps. That's why they get picked because of potential and talent, but they need practice and game reps. The best place to get that is the G League.
go
That's where
ahead.
Bronny's probably going to be. He's going to be in the G League because he needs reps. But the whole factor, like we've been talking about this whole time, is LeBron going to have him in the G League? I don't know. He got him drafted, so
The
anything can happen.
the
He could
funniest part
start
of
night
all
one.
this, the funniest part of all this is, have you heard the story behind the jersey number?
No, I have not.
I don't know if this is why Bronny's wearing it, but it wouldn't surprise me. So
He's number 9, right?
yeah, this is the funniest
Yeah.
part of all this to me. When LeBron was coming into the league in 2003, he
Okay.
obviously wore 23 in high school. He wanted to wear 23 in the pros and his management and sorry audience because you heard this last week. His management actually said no, you should wear a different number. The way that Michael Jordan made 23 his own, like 23 wasn't a thing
Yeah.
in
Before
basketball
Jordan.
before Jordan. It was kind of seen as an awkward number. Why would you choose that? Blah 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 blah. And so that's what they wanted LeBron to do. It's like we want to give you a number and
It's
make it your
LeBron.
own.
Yeah.
And like like the number this is LeBron, and that number was 9. And LeBron said absolutely not. Like I want to wear 23. Like that's what I wore in High school,
Yeah.
I wore it because I like Jordan. I want to be like Jordan. I want to be better than Jordan. I'm wearing 23. So he refused the number 9 to make it his own so he could wear 23. And now, 20 something years later, his son walks into the NBA wearing that same number his father refused 20 something years earlier. I found that to be so, I don't know if that factored into the decision at all, but given the way that LeBron like keeps receipts and thinks one step ahead, it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if it played into it. I don't think it did, but I find it so funny that it even
That's
has
it's a good story. The dots are
it, it,
connecting. To
it's a
bring up
good
Coach
story.
Driscoll again, Driscoll loves dots on a map. Those are dots on a map for sure for the James
That's the name
family
of
and
the episode
numbers.
that he was on. It's
Yep,
because he
dots on a
said it
map.
multiple times in the interview.
Yeah.
Dots on a map. But before I let you go, I want to touch on one more thing.
All right.
We've mentioned this, and I want to get your take on the WNBA and the state of
Yep.
women's basketball and the way that it's grown. And we've seen it dissipate a little bit, but kind of the treatment that Caitlin Clark has gotten from fellow NBA players at this time and all this sort of stuff. But we've obviously seen unprecedented growth.
Yep.
And I don't want I'm going to write an article about this here in a little bit, and I don't want to sound hyperbolic. Let it breathe. The WNBA is having their Michael Jordan moment.
Yes.
You could argue that they're having their Magic and Larry moment. That Angel Reese is the Magic Johnson to Caitlin Clark's Larry Bird because in the 70s, Magic and Larry, that rivalry saved the NBA
Saved
and
college and saved the
it
NBA.
saved college, it saved the NBA. But also I draw that line to Michael Jordan, not to say that Caitlin Clark is going to be the greatest of all time. Do not twist it at
No.
all. What I'm saying is that the presence of Michael Jordan in any city, in any country, in anywhere blew up ticket sales. Blew
Yes.
like when the Bulls would go to China, that
Yeah.
like it would be packed out. People would bring signs. This is I in the he'd go play the Magic in Orlando, and they'd be like, I drove all the way from Indiana to come
For
see
this
him
game.
play. Like or like I came all the way from Alaska to watch him play in Chicago. That is what's happening with Caitlin Clark in the WNBA right now. I think
Yeah.
I saw something that they just had to move a game. I think against the
Yeah.
Aces
Yep. The
to
other night.
a stadium with thousands of more seats just to fit everybody that wanted to come.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
think
No.
that the WNBA is having that Jordan and China moment where everybody is coming in droves to see this one person.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely this is great for the WNBA. I've been watching WNBA for 6 years now. And the first time I watched the game, I was blown away just by the level of the game. I always kind of dismissed it like a lot of players and a
Mhm.
lot of people have for years now. But what Caitlin Clark's doing for the game is exactly what the WME needs and exactly what they should want. And it's not just Caitlin Clark, which is what people fail to realize. Angel Reese is a beast. Like she's a
No,
problem.
she is. And
Like
there are a
I
lot of great
understand.
players. There are a lot of great players in the last couple of years. Brianna
Yes.
Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu,
Oh, exactly. They're
Cameron
very
Brink
good.
before she got hurt. A lot of great players, but like it was Caitlin Clark that really brought up attention that was not there before. And
Yeah,
early,
undeniable.
and it seems to have dissipated, but early on, it seemed like there was a bit of you can call it jealousy
Hmm.
or hard feelings about all the attention she was getting. Where do you stand on that? You've said you've watched it for several years now. Where do you stand? Do you think there was a little bit of jealousy? Do you think there was a little bit of unnecessary hate from other players to Caitlin Clark, or
I
what are your
think,
thoughts?
no, I don't think that. And the
Mhm.
reason is because players are players. Everyone thinks you're better than the other player. That's how every player thinks. And when you're at the highest level, like these women are, I guarantee you that's how they think. So because of that, it's just the attention that Caitlin is bringing with her. Now all the other stuff gets more attention as well. And that's where people think hate and jealousy all come from. But really, it's a competitor mindset, a competitor's nature to be,
Right.
no, I'm just as good. No, I might even be better. No, I actually am better. That's how a competitor thinks. So that's what's been exemplified more.
Right.
And because of Caitlin Clark being the one bringing all the eyes, more people side with her on all of it. And I think she's really good. Obviously, I think a lot of the women in the league are trying to show Caitlin, like, hey, we're good too. You're going to see it. And they are good.
Right.
The
Because
guys,
it
they
did
are
take Caitlin
very good.
a few games to get her feet under her. The first couple
Yeah.
games were rough, right? And
I
then
mean, just the other night against the Aces, Kelsey Plum gave her 34, 6, and 6. So
Kelsey
it's
Plum
like
is ridiculous. Like
she,
Kelsey Plum is,
but see, this is the thing.
dude.
Kelsey Plum's been doing this for like
Right,
as long as
right,
I've been watching, 5 or 6 years
right.
now. So it's awesome to see the recognition that her and Aja Wilson, especially, are getting with the Aces because they're so good. But it's like what Caitlin Clark is having to experience every night is difficult. Everybody wants to give the best, to beat the best, to show they're
Right,
the best. And that's
right.
just the competitor mindset. So I don't think it's any jealousy or hatred or
Everybody
anything from
played
any of the
Michael Harder.
players. Well, that's
Everybody
the
played
thing.
Michael Harder. Everybody trash talked Michael a
And
little bit more, right?
and it's tough too. This is one thing people forget about too. Michael finishes college in March with North Carolina. He has 4 or 5 months at least before that first NBA game,
Right.
right?
The
Caitlin
WNBA
Clark,
schedule is so abbreviated. She
Caitlin
went from
Clark
playing in the
literally
Final Four.
finished
Yeah.
a
She
week
literally went
before
from
the season
playing,
started.
right, playing in the national championship to drafted to first preseason game in less than 2 weeks, like 10
Yes, I think it was
days.
2 weeks exactly. So obviously, if ever, she's really good. Caitlin's a fantastic player. She's only going to get better. But
Right,
the thing is, practice with your team, practicing at that level is different than college. It just
right,
is. Even Angel Reese has struggled. Her shooting percentages weren't great to start the year, but now she's on a 10-game double double streak, the longest ever as a
right,
rookie. So like
right.
it took her 10 games, but now she's in the field. But if you add it up, how many months has it been since college? Been 4 months since college. You need that time to build up to the level. And then now your talent and skills start catching up to the speed of the game, the physicality of the game, the size of the game, all that other stuff. And people forget about that. That's a big thing in the WNBA that they need to fix, I think, because
So,
a
right.
2 week gap is just not it's good because of how much attention Caitlin brought to the game. And then it obviously translated right to that first week of the WNBA season, right? There was no lull in the action for Caitlin Clark and the media attention. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you can't expect greatness when you only have like 2 weeks to become great.
It really sheds light on the Cameron Brink injury. It's like,
Yeah,
of course, her ACL popped. Like she's been
it's been
playing for
12 months
6 months.
straight
Yeah, exactly.
because she
You know,
started
and
probably last summer.
right,
Whenever she finished her vacation last summer, she just kept going all year round and
right,
right into this one. And now it's been
right.
12 months since she had a break.
Before I let you go, I have to bring it up because you said that you don't think it's jealousy, you don't think it's this,
Hmm.
and I'm not here to play contrarian. Although I did in an
Yeah.
earlier episode think that there was a little bit of it. I think there was a little bit of it, and I have to bring up the Kennedy Carter hit. What did you make
Yeah.
of that? Because that seemed to be the most egregious of what was seen as kind of a
Yeah.
hazing at best
Yeah.
of
She went
Caitlin
over the
Clark
line.
when she first showed up. Yeah.
Yeah. She went over the line. And, in the moment, adrenaline's pumping, all that kind of stuff. Kennedy's going to defend herself and be like, no, I didn't go over the line. It's just basketball. But, probably she's taken a few steps back now from the situation. Be like, look, I overreacted. I was trying to assert my dominance a little too much, my aggressiveness, my physicality. And, you know, it was too much. The media probably blew it out of proportion more so. I mean, if you watch
Oh,
NBA
certainly.
games, you'll watch
Yeah,
you see a lot of high elbows on box outs. Go watch an NBA game. Someone goes in for a rebound on a free throw hard. That next time they do that, there's a high elbow coming to them. Now it doesn't always connect, but it's like, hey, look, you're going to run into this thing next time. So that's at every level as a pro that I've experienced.
right.
So I'm sure that's kind of how it went for Kennedy as well. And yeah, she's had a track record, but in the same breath, you would say it'd be great. Grayson Allen had a big track record too in college, tripping guys, pulling jerseys, all this kind of stuff. So it happens. It's a game. It's basketball. You want to be great, and when you're not great, you're going to do maybe one or two things you wish you could have back, and that's what it
That
is.
be, that being said, I have to ask you, and this is something I would probably ask every athlete because I think it's funny. And I may have asked you this last time, but like,
Mhm.
what was as a player, what was your Kennedy Carter moment? Your like, welcome to the new level, welcome to pro basketball. Other than just like
Oh,
guys being bigger, did you have a moment where you got you went to set a pick and got absolutely dropped, or somebody dunked on you?
Yeah.
What was your moment?
Yeah, no, it was in the one I vividly remember was my first year in Germany. So that would have been like technically my third season as a pro, coming after my ACL injury and whatnot. Yannick Fries, big 7 foot German guy, great dude. He's one of my best friends still. So shout out Freezy.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
I got switched on in the post, and I mean he's 7 foot. I'm 6'8". He's probably about 240, 250. So he's got the size and everything on me. So I'm really like fighting hard. I got two elbows in his back basically, trying not to let him go. And he's a little fed up at just how practice had been going that day. And he hit me with the meanest elbow I'd ever caught right here. And boy, I'd never been hit so hard and it not be called an offensive foul in my life. And it was boom, quick, hard, and it wasn't like egregious. He was just like, look, you're going to put two elbows in my back. I'm going to make sure mine are up and out when I make this spin move. And he sure did. And he, yeah, I felt it. I was like, all right, I understand my place. Obviously, I got mad. I pushed him back. He pushes me. Then we go have dinner afterwards, and it's like, it's all blown over. It's all good in the end, but it's like,
Absolutely.
he's like, hey, man, you can't do that to me. And I was like,
Yeah.
hey, you can't do that to me. And we're both like, okay, deal. We can't do it to each other. We're done. So
You know,
that was like that was the moment. And I was like, all right, Freezy, I'm not getting hit with those again.
this might just be a me thing, but I would rather listen to if you gave me an hour of a player's best highlights or an hour of that player telling stories of, oh, I got my butt kicked,
Yeah.
or like this dude absolutely destroyed me. I'm taking the stories of getting your butt kicked.
Oh yeah, because
Because
those don't make the YouTube highlight
no,
reels.
yeah, no. All we're ever shown is how great somebody is, but I want to hear
Yeah.
stories of, oh, I walked in that day and I wanted to throw up, like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
I
like
have
that's what
plenty
I
of
love
those
about
stories.
that's what I love about sports docs, and that I think back to The Last Dance when Charles Barkley said, and I 100% believed him when he said this. He said that was the first time in my life playing against Michael Jordan in the finals. He said that was the first time in my life that I knew I wasn't the best player on the floor.
Yeah. Yep. I remember the quote.
And I love stories like that because you don't see that side of those athletes
Yeah.
that they've gone through their whole lives thinking I'm the best. And they
Yes.
walk up on somebody and you're like, "Oh no." Like
He's got me beat.
so
Yeah.
I love those oh no stories. I love them because they're
Yes.
so real and they humanize the athletes that
Hmm.
we're conditioned to believe aren't, right?
Yeah.
And so I always love to ask questions like that. But that's all I got for you, Beau. I appreciate you coming on and joining us again. And maybe next time you'll be here in person and we'll have your jersey on the
That'd
wall.
be
You can sit
nice.
underneath it. Although I might have to get a taller futon because you're 6'8", and the futon is a little low to the ground. But we'll work it out.
We'll
We'll
work
work it
on it.
out.
We'll work on it. I appreciate it,
But
Roman. Thank you so much for having me,
but
man.
yeah,
As
thanks for
always.
joining us. Do you have any last words for our audience?
Go UNF. And if you want to follow the Formosa Dreamers in Taiwan, just Google us. You'll find us. I think
All
we
right.
have live games on YouTube. Other than that, download the Hooper IQ app, please and thank you. Leave a review on your app store as well. And that's about it, Roman. Thank you so much,
Was,
man.
was that a product of yours? I've seen stuff about that. Was that you or just a friend of yours?
So it's my friend. He
Okay.
created the app and all that, and then he asked me to join on and help out with the content creation for the app and the kind of the IQ portion of the
Tell
basketball.
us a little bit
So
about it. Tell us a little bit about the Hooper
yeah,
IQ
so
app.
it's a Hooper IQ free app to play. There's daily quizzes and there's also unranked quizzes, hundreds of them, and basically it's trying to teach you or anybody the game of basketball through the professional's lens. So myself, Demarcus Daniels is on our team as well, and then Merrick Klassen, who's also a professional like myself. And we're just trying to teach the game of basketball through video, uh, question quiz type clips. And the clips can range from college, WNBA, high school, overseas, you name it. We got clips on everybody, every player, every prototype of player is on the app. So it's not just a 6'8" guy telling you how to shoot the ball or a 5'8" guy telling you how to play pick and roll. We have all player types on there. So whatever kind of player you are, you can get on the app, play the app for free. You get instant feedback on your quizzes, right or wrong questions, right or wrong answers, and there's a whole community, a whole leaderboard to kind of track your IQ and play against anybody in the world, which is pretty awesome as well. So, yeah, that's Hooper IQ app. It's really fun. It's easy to play. Anybody can do it, and there's like levels. You can almost think of it as like Candy Crush. We're trying to get it to where
Right.
you kind of progress through each level. You got to pass the level to go to a certain point. So we have a lot of new features in store for the next update of the app as well, which is fun. I can't disclose all that yet, but yeah, things are moving and it's fun. And if you want to enjoy basketball and learning a little bit, Hooper IQ is the app for you. And smarter basketball starts with Hooper IQ.
Awesome. Check out the Hooper
So,
IQ app. We'll try to put a link down in the description of this video. And thanks both for joining us and talking about basketball. You're always welcome on the podcast, bud.
thank you, Roman. Anytime, man.